Good evening, you're watching London Live News at 6 with Helena Warrior. Coming up tonight, the killer of primary school teacher Sabina Nessa declined to appear in court today as more details of her murder were revealed at the Old Bailey. Scotland Yard says it accepts all recommendations for an overhaul of culture in the Met Police after sexist and racist messages discovered between officers at Charing Cross Police Station are found not to be an isolated incident. We'll have an update on London's weather in the next 10 minutes, plus former Olympic champion Jessica Ennis-Hill tells us about swapping the track for tech and how she's hoping to help UK workers change careers. And from The Greatest Showman to the West End, Keala Settle has joined the cast of And Juliet. We'll hear from her a little later in the programme. First tonight, though, the killer of primary school teacher Sabina Nessa declined to attend his sentencing today at the Old Bailey. Kosi Selamaj has been told to expect a life term, with the sentencing adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow. Today, the court heard the details of Nessa's murder and how he had a history of violence against his former wife. The court was shown CCTV footage of Selamaj attacking Nessa with an emergency car triangle, rendering her unconscious before he strangled her and removed some of her clothes and covered her body in grass. The family and colleagues of Sabina has spoken at the Old Bailey today. Well, London Live's Alicia Edwards is here with more. Alicia, just tell us, what did her family say today in court?
Well, an incredibly difficult time for her parents and her sister today at the Old Bailey. Her parents, her mother and father, addressing him directly, although he wasn't there to hear it, saying, "You had no right to take her away from us in such a cruel way." They described Sabina as a funny, kind and determined person with a love of animals. Her sister, Jabina, called Selamaj a coward for not being at court today, saying that she was going to be haunted by the images that she'd seen of her sister. Also, the head teacher of the school where Sabina worked described working with her and said it had had an devastating impact on the school, saying for the rest of their lives these young children will never be able to comprehend why someone murdered their teacher, and the world in which they live is not safe for them to play in a park. Well, Mr. Justice Sweeney adjourned the sentencing until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, but the judge noted a life sentence was inevitable with a minimum term of 30 years.
Absolutely. Well, we'll have more on that sentencing tomorrow. Alicia, thank you very much. Now, the Metropolitan Police has today accepted all recommendations for an overhaul of its culture, which includes taking a zero-policy stance on misogyny and bullying. It comes after the police watchdog uncovered racist, sexist and homophobic text messages sent by officers primarily based in teams at Charing Cross Police Station. An independent office for police conduct said the messages were not isolated incidents and issued Scotland Yard with 15 recommendations for reform. The Met's Deputy Assistant Commissioner Bas Javid said they will use the recommendations to drive forward lasting change that will help improve the public's confidence in the force. A man who met a woman at a nightclub before going on to film himself raping her has been jailed for 13 years. 25-year-old Torlant Krasniki went home with the victim, who is in her 20s, after approaching her on the dance floor of a nightclub in Kingston, South London. The woman slept in her own bedroom, but during the night she woke to see Krasniki sitting at the end of her bed with her phone in his hand. The next day, images circulated on social media platform Snapchat of the victim. Police officers also discovered videos on Krasniki's phone of the assault. He pleaded guilty to rape, voyeurism and theft. Ukraine says it urgently needs more weapons from its Western allies to defend itself against Russia. Ukraine's foreign minister said more atrocities against civilians like in Bucha could happen if Ukraine doesn't quickly get more military aid. NATO foreign ministers met today in Brussels, where they will discuss military aid to Ukraine, who are not a member of NATO but are being supported by the alliance. Russia has warned that giving weapons to Ukraine will have a negative effect on peace talks. The Labour Party has called for full transparency from Chancellor Rishi Sunak after it emerged his wife, Akshata Murthy, benefits from a tax-saving scheme. Murthy has non-dom status, meaning she does not have to pay UK tax on income earned abroad. Her spokeswoman said she pays all tax due in the UK, but Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said Rishi Sunak had very serious questions to answer about his family's finances.
The Chancellor has imposed tax rise after tax rise on working people. And he's said time and again, there's no alternative, we've got no option. If it now transpires that his wife has used schemes to reduce her own tax, then that's breathtaking hypocrisy and only goes to show it's more evidence of just how out of touch this Chancellor is. And I think he's got very, very serious questions to answer in relation to these schemes.
Well, that was Sir Keir Starmer there. Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng, however, defended Mr Sunak and the non-dom status, saying it had been part of the UK's tax system for more than 200 years. An investigation has found that excess movement and corrosion led to high-speed trains being withdrawn from service last year. Cracks were found in more than 180 Hitachi trains being used by Great Western Railway and London North Eastern Railway, or LNER. The Office of Rail and Road said the damage was partly due to the trains being corroded by salt in the air. Hitachi Rail has proposed a plan to replace and modify affected parts to be completed over 6 years. Well, it has been confirmed today that the 4G pilot scheme on the Jubilee line between Westminster and Canning Town is to be made permanent. The pilot began in March 2020, allowing passengers access to the internet in stations and tunnels of the eastern end of the line. Well, due to its success, moves to introduce 4G across the London Underground continue to advance, with the wider aim of a 4 and 5G ready network by the end of 2024. Now, new stats have shown a huge 81% of Londoners experience insomnia and 61% consider themselves bad sleepers. The research has been carried out to mark Stress Awareness Month, and people who live in the capital were found to be the most stressed about not getting enough sleep. Well, Hebe spoke to James Wilson, who's also known as the Sleep Geek, about the findings.
We conducted a study looking at how the nation is sleeping, and the results for London, like very much of the country, where we are struggling to sleep. So we found that 81% of Londoners do struggle to get a good night's sleep. Over a third of Londoners feel stressed about the sleep. They are worrying about getting to sleep. So that was something that was quite common across the country.
The study found that London was the place where people most worried about not getting sleep when they weren't getting it, right?
That is correct. And I think I do a lot of work in London. I work with organisations in London a lot, and I would say that's quite a common thing. That I think as a city, London does worry about its sleep. It does struggle to sort of like relax about its sleep, to stop stressing about sleep. And the thing with sleep is actually the more we stress about it, the harder sleep is. So the more stress we get, the way our body's designed, it releases hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, and these hormones are fight or flight hormones. They're about we're under attack, and if we are in fight or flight mode, if you think about it from an evolutionary point of view, when we have predators, if we're in fight or flight mode, we've probably been chased by something, maybe a saber-toothed tiger. If you've been chased by a saber-toothed tiger, you don't want to feel sleepy. So it makes sense when you understand what's happening in the body, but this is it. Fear not. There are things you can do to try and help your body relax enough to fall asleep, and also relax enough to feel like you've sustained sleep. And it is about those rituals before bed.
Why do you think London was found to be a place where people are getting kind of the least amount of sleep?
And I think, as we found in the research, London is worrying more than other parts of the country. I work in organisations and I work with sports teams, and I think I do find culturally, when working with people in London, there is this worry around sleep. There is this worry around stress about sleep, and the more we stress about our sleep, the harder sleep becomes. It is quite an interconnected relationship between stress and sleep, because the hormones we create when we are struggling to sleep, so the cortisol, the adrenaline, they directly impact on the body's ability to create the hormones it needs to sleep, like melatonin. So it doesn't surprise me. I think Londoners often have got a very long commute, so that can feed into making their the time they've got available to wind down less. I think often in many cities you often find that life is a bit more hectic.
Well, on to football now, and West Ham are preparing to take on Lyon at the Europa League quarter-final first leg. It's the first time the Hammers have reached this stage in 41 years, and manager David Moyes says they've not looked beyond tonight's match.
We take every competition really serious, whether it be the League Cup or whether it be the FA Cup. We treat them all with the same importance. But this one is obviously a little bit more special because to be in amongst all the European teams and things that we've not had for years is really important for us. But we can't think any further. We're playing against a team who 2 years ago I think were in the Champions League semi-final. So we would be crazy to be thinking any further than this first game especially, which will be different. It'll have different connotations from what we've had in the game against Seville. So we have to understand that, and even supporters and as a club will need to realise this is a different setup now.
Well, there you go. That game kicks off at 8 p.m. at the London Stadium. The nominees for this year's Ivor Novello Awards for songwriting are in, and Londoner Inflow leads the way with 4 nominations, including 3 in the Best Album category. Well, Henry Thomas Aldridge has more.
The nominees for this year's Ivor Novello Awards for songwriting are in, with Londoner Inflow leading the way with 4 nominations, including 3 in the Best Album category. The Ivor Novello Awards recognise creative musical achievement in songwriting and composition, whilst celebrating a number of singer-songwriters and groups for their wider contribution to UK music. Star names Adele, Dave, Coldplay and Ray are up for the ceremony's big prize, Songwriter of the Year, with Ed Sheeran also listed just days after his Shape of You copyright trial victory. Into its 3rd year, the event's Rising Star Award features an all-female list of nominees, with former winner Holly Humberstone up in the Best Song category for this year. And those lucky enough to be nominated will find out soon enough if they've won at the 67th edition of the ceremony. That will be hosted at Grosvenor House on May 19th.
There you go, that was Henry Thomas Aldridge there. Time for a quick look at the weather now. Gusty winds continue this evening with temperatures around 4 degrees overnight. Tomorrow morning continues to feel cold, but those winds will have died down with a light cloud and gentle breeze. A little nicer over the weekend as there will be sunny intervals with temperatures around 13 or 14 degrees. Well, just before the break, let's bring you this. Harry Potter favourite Tom Felton is to play Guy Fawkes in a new immersive attraction at the Tower of London. Called The Gunpowder Plot, Felton will portray the infamous criminal whose plot to blow up the Houses of Parliament was foiled. Audience members will be tasked with infiltrating the plot in the show, which uses VR and special effects to create the London of 1605. Well, that's due to open on May 20th in the vaults of the Tower of London. One for those Draco Malfoy fans there. You're watching London Live News. Coming up after the break, London Live's paper reviewer Matt Withers will be in the studio to chat through the stories making headlines in the local papers, including a very costly COVID vaccine festival.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. Time now for a look at the stories making headlines in the local papers. Well, London Live's paper reviewer Matt Withers is here. Matt, let's start with this costly COVID vaccine festival.
Yeah, this is a story in the East London Advertiser. It's about Tower Hamlets Council, who they put on a festival aimed at increasing the uptake of COVID vaccines. So they booked all manner of kind of bands and musicians and put on food stalls. And people could come along and enjoy it and get vaccinated while we were there. Unfortunately, not many people did. So it cost hundreds of pounds per person who was jabbed. This was in July and August of last year. They also gave out free food vouchers, which made it increasingly expensive. But it cost them £237,235 to run, but only 435 people were jabbed during the festival, meaning that it cost them £535.36 per vaccination that took place.
Wow. I mean, I suppose there's worse things to spend money on, but, you know, we heard how some London boroughs had less vaccine uptakes than others. Was that kind of the reasoning behind this festival?
Yeah, Tower Hamlets was and remains incredibly low. Just 55.7% of residents have had all three COVID vaccine. That compares to a UK average of 67.6%. Only 74.6% have had the first coronavirus vaccine and 70.8% have had the second. So that compares to 91.9% and 86% respectively. So incredibly low figures in Tower Hamlets, and there is a fund that the council could draw on from central government to try to encourage more people to have the vaccination. One would suggest that there were better ways of doing this than having this festival. You can find pictures of it online. It was very sparsely attended, at least it appears from the pictures.
Wow, well, there you go. OK, let's move on to this. A South London nursery, which has been given a warning as they found the staff didn't really know what the children should be learning.
Yeah, this is incredible. This is from the Lewisham News Shopper. It's a South London nursery. It's been After inspectors, as you say, they found that the staff didn't know what children should be learning. Ofsted said that the workers at Five Steps Community Nursery in Rotherhithe didn't know how to teach well 7 months after it was previously judged inadequate. The inspectors found that kids were held back from improving their communication skills because staff failed to ask questions or comment on what they were doing, and as a result, some of the children were leaving the nursery, going to proper school, completely unequipped, basically, to start the learning process.
So now what happens? What does the future hold for this nursery if their standards don't improve?
Well, basically, they've got a chance to up their game now. They had another negative inspection last year, and that one found that they were failing to record injuries that children arrived at the nursery with. They said that staff didn't know what to do if they had concerns about child safety. Now, they're happy that that's been improved upon on this new inspection, which took place in February, but they still have their concerns about the standards of the teaching, so they will go back in and inspect again. Unsurprisingly, the managers Lindsay Craig and Jean Williams in their response are very much focused on the positives, on the improvements of the previous time, rather than the issues that have come up. They said that the inspector was very impressed with the improvements made since our last inspection, as staff safeguarding knowledge was excellent. They focused less on the fact that the teachers didn't know what the kids should learn.
Right, well, a long way to go for this South London nursery, it would seem. Well, let's move on to a good news story now. We love animal stories here, so tell us a bit about Basil the cat.
Yeah, this is remarkable from the Ilford Recorder. This is a cat that's been reunited with its owners after almost 10 years, which you see these stories occasionally, but 10 years seems like an incredibly long time. Basil the cat went missing in 2012, leaving his owners, the Wilby family, distraught. They searched for him. No amount of putting up posters, knocking on doors, found him. He was registered on his microchip, but was never found via that. But what's happened now is that a Dagenham Animal Rescue Centre got a call that would change everything. Paddy Prentice, who's a 90-year-old who lived just 5 minutes from the Wilbys, informed about a visiting cat. She said, the lovely cat's been visiting me for many years, but recently started to stay overnight, so I was worried that he didn't have a home. They managed to check the microchip, found that it was the Wilbys, but then, of course, 10 years ago, they'd long since moved house. They thought that they'd have to give this cat away, but then they put it on a Facebook group. A local resident who happily was a former Met detective got on the case, managed to track them down, and now this cat's back after 10 years.
Absolutely remarkable story. So what did the owners of Basil say then, and have they got Basil back?
Yes, they have. Mrs. Wilby, who doesn't give a first name, she said, when an animal goes missing, your brain keeps on creating stories of what might have happened. When you realise that none of them are true and you've got your furry friend back, it brings about a wonderful sense of peace and of being whole again. So we don't know Mrs. Wilby's name, but we can assume that she's probably a tabloid journalist because nobody else says furry friend.
Absolutely amazing. Right, finally then, we visited this story a few weeks ago, a bakery called Bread à Manger, who was in a fight with Pret a Manger.
Yes, we spoke. This was in the South London Press a few weeks ago. We spoke about it. It is a bakery marketplace in Bermondsey. It was called Bread à Manger. They got a letter from the lawyers of Pret a Manger who said, not unreasonably, that it sounded remarkably close to their own name. Well, this has come to an end now, and I'm afraid it's a David and Goliath battle in which the little one lost here. They have changed their name. They've renamed it as Bread and Macaroon after the legal letters. They said they've updated their sign, and that the co-owner, Bertrand Curlio, said we had to change our name. For now, we just follow the lawyers. We just changed our name last weekend. It's finished now.
What have the owners of the bakery said about their turnover since changing their name? Has anything happened? Have they lost any fans?
They have said that they have had a lack of customers stopping by the bakery. It's not clear if it's due to the change of name. It says here it's the end of the month. People haven't got the money. Everybody says to me, don't worry, chef, it's going to pick up. So I would have thought that actually any publicity is good publicity for these guys.
Absolutely. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us on London Live, the roundup of the papers. Now, London and the rest of the nation have gained a new radio station this week with the launch of Great British Radio. Aiming to make listeners laugh at least every 10 minutes, the station is focusing on humour and upbeat interviews and music. Well, it's the brainchild of comedian and broadcaster Mike Osman and has the backing of Pimlico's plumbing entrepreneur Charlie Mullins. Well, I spoke to Charlie a little earlier about what we can expect from the new radio station.
It's a new radio station that's being presented by Mike Osmond, and it's going to be all about sort of happy things, no sad news, fun, and loads of great guests are going to be on it, great presenters, great music, great shows are going to have on it, and nothing sad at all. So it's very much something that we need at the moment.
So, like you said there, the station is focusing on humour and it won't carry news bulletins. Just tell us a bit more about why you made that decision.
Well, I think it's long overdue that, you know, all the radio stations at the moment are on about the news and the bad news, and now we just want something to cheer people up. It's just so depressing, and I think there's never going to be a radio station like this. This is totally new, and I think it's going to be so valuable to a lot of people. They're at home all day now, a lot more people are at home, and obviously it's going to cheer them up. It's going to just stop all the depression that's out there, really.
Well, you mentioned there that the station has been set up by Mike Osmond. What's it like working with him, and why is he a good person to set this station up?
Yeah, well, Mike Osmond's a legend, really. You know, he used to be a great comedian, always on the telly, and he does great impressions, you know, so he does Boris Johnson, Donald Trump, and various other ones that he's going to keep doing on the radio, and it's just so much fun and very professional, and I think it's something that Mike really seems to be fitting into. He's sort of done some of this before, and now he's got his own radio station with some great people involved.
Well, tell us about some of the other celebrity guests then who are going to appear.
Yeah, there's loads of celebrities going to be on it. There's Chris Tarrant, Harry Redknapp, Brian Connolly, Leslie Joseph, and you know, they're going to have sort of up-and-coming singers. I've got an artist that I'm looking after now in the music business, and Rara's going to have her own show on there, and various other people, Linda Luciano, Sam Kane. It's just never-ending, the people we're going to have on the station.
Well, actually, just tell us a little bit about what kind of music we can expect to hear on the station then.
Well, I mean, being Great British Radio, I think it's going to be old stuff, it's going to be the modern stuff, and anything that's cheerful, anything that's sort of interesting to people, whether it be, you know, the Frank Sinatra stuff or, you know, latest stuff, but a lot of the old music, you know, from the 70s and the 90s, and Rod Stewart, obviously. So, you know, it really is going to be a different channel. There's never going to be a radio like this. And it's going to be happy songs, no depression. And just, you know, it's totally different. Honestly, it's unbelievable.
Well, finally, Charlie, tell us why you decided to put your backing into radio. What is it about that medium that you like?
Well, you know, now I've come away from the other business and I've moved into the music business. I think it's a good launch for myself, but also it's different. And, you know, as soon as Mike Osmond was talking to me about it and I listened to a few of the shows, I thought to myself, I need to buy a chunk of this. And, you know, I'm over the moon with it. And we've got, I think it's Jimmy Tarbuck is going to come on the board and buy into it. So there's going to be so many people that are different to radio, and I really think it's going to be a great success. It's long overdue. Great British Radio, great presenters, great songs, great music, great artists, absolutely.
There you go, that was Charlie Mullins there. You're watching London Live News with Helena Wadia. A reminder of our top story coming up after the break. Plus, the former Olympic champion Jessica Ennis-Hill on swapping the track for tech and how we can help UK workers change careers.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. A reminder of our top story. The killer of primary school teacher Sabina Nessa declined to attend his sentencing today at the Old Bailey. Kosi Selamaj had been told to expect a life term, with the sentencing adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow. Today, the court heard the details of Nessa's murder and how he had a history of violence against his former wife. Well, the court was shown CCTV footage of Selamaj attacking Nessa with an emergency car triangle, rendering her unconscious before he strangled her and removed some of her clothes and covered her body in grass. Well, the family and colleagues of Sabina have spoken at the Old Bailey today, and I spoke to London Live's Alicia Edwards earlier, who told me what they had to say.
An incredibly difficult time for her parents and her sister today at the Old Bailey. Her parents, her mother and father, addressing him directly, although he wasn't there to hear it, saying, "You had no right to take her away from us in such a cruel way." They described Sabina as a funny, kind and determined person with a love of animals. Her sister, Jabina, called Selamaj a coward for not being at court today, saying that she was going to be haunted by the images that she'd seen of her sister. Also, the head teacher of the school where Sabina worked described working with her and said it had had an devastating impact on the school. Well, Mr. Justice Sweeney adjourned the sentencing until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, but the judge noted a life sentence was inevitable with a minimum term of 30 years.
The Metropolitan Police has today accepted all recommendations for an overhaul of its culture, which includes taking a zero policy stance on misogyny and bullying. It comes after the police watchdog uncovered racist, sexist and homophobic text messages sent by officers primarily based in teams at Charing Cross Police Station. An independent office for police conduct said the messages were not isolated incidents and issued Scotland Yard with 15 recommendations for reform. The Met's Deputy Assistant Commissioner Bas Javid said they will use the recommendations to drive forward lasting change that will help improve the public's confidence in the force. Now, the former Olympic champion Jessica Ennis-Hill is looking to help those wanting to change jobs who feel that they are limited by their digital skills. It comes after 1 in 5 UK workers say they can't change career path because they aren't clued up on tech. Well, the former athlete has herself changed careers and become a tech entrepreneur, launching an app focusing on shaping women's fitness to their menstrual cycle. Well, Henry has been speaking to the former heptathlete about how people can improve their skills, her new app, and if she misses her life on the track.
So it's been really interesting because it's obviously been a very turbulent couple of years for all of us, but it's really impacted the way we use technology and how we've increased the amount of technology we use and the way that we use it, but also the fact that a lot of people have been left behind with, furthering these skills.
You talk about people being left behind. Do you think that's one of the main reasons why people are a little bit, afraid of getting clued up on tech?
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with confidence when it comes to the digital space. I think we were all kind of forced into using lots of digital platforms during the pandemic, and that was our only way to continue our careers and communicate with everyone. And actually, so many people haven't had, the expertise and the help to support them to really understand how to navigate themselves, through technology. So the course that Santander are offering is really exciting because it's enabling as many people to really further those skills.
You yourself, of course, former athlete and Olympian, have transferred your skills. What's the app that you've created?
Yeah, so I spent my whole career in sport and in a sporting world. And then when I retired in 2016, I kind of went into a completely different unknown world to me. And that was the app and the digital space. But it's been really exciting. I've been able to transfer lots of key skills that I learned within the sporting world and move them into the digital space as well, and push myself out of my comfort zone as well and learn lots of new skills. So yeah, it's been really interesting.
What elements have you transferred from athletics to the sort of digital sector then?
I think more than anything, it's been that understanding of process. So, understanding that when you're trying to reach an end goal, there's a process to get there and it doesn't happen instantly. I think the whole team environment and the importance around having great people around you with everything you do is something that I've definitely taken from the world of sport and moving into this new kind of area that I'm in now. So just really trying to build a really skillful team that all bring, expertise in their own right, but collectively work together in a really powerful way.
Why did you decide to move into something like this, creating an app?
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of draw on what I'd done in sport and the learnings from the kind of sporting world and bring them to the masses. So the app Janice that we've created as a team is basically aimed at women to help them understand their bodies, like physiologically how different women are from men. So the app allows you to train in line with your menstrual cycle. So understanding those 4 phases of your cycle, how to optimize the way you move your body through those different phases, and generally just to become more body literate. So it's been, an amazing opportunity, and to have those new skills within the digital world and to understand an app is just able to get to the masses and so many more women, which is super exciting.
You've been at the centre of some of British sport's finest moments. Do you miss the competitive side of being an athlete? People say it often can't be replicated.
Yeah, I think it is hard to replicate that feeling that you have when you stand, in an Olympic Games, at the start of the hurdles, for example. The adrenaline and buzz that you have is incredible. And I suppose I do miss elements of that, but I feel that I've kind of taken myself out of my comfort zone in different ways now and furthering like new skills and ways of kind of motivating myself. So yeah, I kind of miss elements, but I'm quite happy to be retired and kind of cheering on the rest of the British athletes on the sideline now.
Yeah, you can put the feet up whilst everyone else does the work. You achieved so much in your career. You were the poster girl for the 2012 Games here in London, winning gold. But of course, you had a fantastic career either side of that. How thankful are you for achieving everything you did in your career and going down in British history?
Yeah, I mean, it still kind of like surprises me when I look back at my career and the years that I've had within sport. It's been an incredible journey. You know, I started athletics as a 9-year-old girl that didn't know anything about sport and became, you know, 3-time world champion and Olympic champion. I had no idea I would go on to achieve that. But yeah, I suppose it's just kind of shown me that, you know, passion, hard work and focus, whatever field you're in, you know, you can achieve incredible things if you put all those elements together.
Well, you seem so driven. You, of course, as an athlete, you've created this app. What's next for you?
I think continuing with the app at the moment. So there's so many different things we want to do with that and so many different areas we want to go into. And our main aim as a team is to, you know, support women as much as we can with understanding their bodies and how to move them through their lifespan, really. So yeah, lots more work to be done there, but a really exciting time for us as a team.
You're watching London Live News. Coming up in the final part of the show, we head down to the Shaftesbury Theatre to speak to some of the new faces taking the stage in the West End's and Juliet.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. Now, the pop musical, which puts a new twist on Shakespeare's tale of star-crossed lovers, has welcomed some new cast members this month. Anne Juliet is starring Keala Settle as the nurse in the West End hit, and you might remember her from The Greatest Showman. Well, Alicia went to the theatre to have a chat with Keala and other leads in the show.
What if Juliet didn't kill herself? That should almost be the start of the play.
I had a chance to do the reading of this, the very first reading of it, 5 years ago, 2017, in LA, with David Badella. He played Lance and I played Angelique the nurse. And it was the first time I'd ever heard any of the storyline. I knew Max Martin's songs, a lot of them, like the back of my head, because I'm a proud 46-year-old woman. And so I was really excited to be a part of it and to also meet the creative team at that time. I never thought that I would get to be on this stage doing it, but I remember over the years sort of going, has anyone heard about that Anne Juliet show anywhere? Does anyone know what's going on with it? No, right, fine. Just carry on then. And I did it before The Greatest Showman came out. So it's just really lovely to have had that opportunity and then actually to have it come full circle being here and being on the West End, because it has been my dream for a lifetime to be on the West End, because my father's from here originally and I've always wanted to pay homage to him. He's still alive, but he's going to come to see the show actually, so I'm really excited. Yeah, I don't want to think about it anymore, I'll start crying. I'm just really privileged and proud and so grateful to be here and to tell that story. The story is incredible. The way it's written out, the way it's laid out, the music, the way all of that is entwined and, you know, woven into everything to create such a powerful yet celebratory story of life and love and hope. And the heart that's in it, it's massive, and there's nowhere else I want to be right now. So I'm really happy I can do it, and I hope everyone gets a chance to see it, because we're giving that to everyone every night, no matter who's here, and we'll continue to do so. My favourite song is Show Me Love, because like I said, I am a proud 46-year-old woman, and one of the first Max Martin songs that I remember hearing, I think I was at a gym one time, was the original version. I think Robin S recorded it, called Show Me Love. And I remember hearing it going, that's a bop, mate. That is a bop. And just sitting there, not lifting weights anymore, because I was like, oh, I love this song. Too much pride, too independent to have you by my side. I just loved it. And then it kept going and going and going. And that's when I started doing a bit of research on it and realizing it was Max, and then seeing what else he was writing. And that's when Britney Spears came up and all of the beginnings of those Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, all of those that I was really, and I was in university already, so I was well past, because my boy band was New Kids on the Block, which is an American group. So I missed out on all of the fandom of that, but the music still reigns supreme.
Something else I can't not mention, The Greatest Showman.
Yes!
Obviously, it really has that musical theatre feel, but without the live audience like this show does. How did you find filming that in front of all those cameras?
Well, the thing about that, ironically enough, there are bits and pieces of course, every segment of the film where you take it out of context because they need that space and you're only doing bits and pieces of a song or a scene. But in particular, for the This Is Me segment, when we are in the ring, that was shot in one day and it took about 16, 17 hours. And because I don't really mark anything, I go full on because I am a theatre nerd. I did that for 16, 17 hours, and all of the dancers, who were amazing and are amazing, were right there. They were right there with me. And the audience by then, but halfway through, basically learned what their bit was that they got to do. And they were doing it by nature. And that was when the camera people were like, well, they're just doing it. We should just pan on the audience because they're doing it by nature. It was very harrowing and very scary, but was a game changer for me because at that point in time, I didn't know really how big the film was going to be at all until I went through that day and realized, oh, because I saw Hugh Jackman on the side with his family because he wasn't filming that day. I saw Rebecca Ferguson and her family, they weren't filming that day, but they were there because they wanted to be there. Ben Platt was there with his friends, Justin, Paul, Benj, Pasek, they were there because they wanted to be there. I had friends that were allowed to be on set at the time because they wanted to be there. That's when I realized it was something different and had no idea that it would be what it is now, but I knew there was something because I could feel it inside and it was changing. Magic, very, very, very harrowing and very scary and tiring, but a magic experience.
So you don't think you'll get bored of that song anytime soon?
I'm totally bored of that song. But that being said, I also had a different relationship with that song up until recently. It was very hard for me to enjoy doing that because so much of that song was traumatizing for me. And I could not get round it. I didn't have time to get round it because I was singing it all over the world, which I'm very grateful for. I'm also a person that a lot of people would never believe this, and I'm going to tell you, but I would rather be in the dark around that corner. I've always wanted to be in the dark around that corner, not even making a wave or a ripple of any kind. Like, you should never know I'm here. I'm still that person, and here we are, but and I'm working on that. It's just one of those things that I really never thought I would still not only be here, but I never thought I would still be doing this, and at this magnitude and at this capacity. And so when the pandemic hit, I took that into account and realized, right, you need to sort yourself out because this isn't going anywhere, no matter how afraid you are of it. And I started digging in and letting go fear by fear by fear. And I still am. I'm afraid sitting here. I'm afraid when I go on deck every night, petrified. But I do it because that's the only way you can fight it, is to go against it and do the exact opposite of it. And I'll keep learning, and maybe I won't have to learn anymore someday, or maybe I won't. But it keeps me grounded, ironically enough. It keeps me grounded, and I'll do it for however long the universe wants me to tell stories, I suppose.
It's been a predominantly major cast change, so there's only really sort of, I think, 6 or 7 people from the old cast.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much like an invasion of new people. Yeah. But the old cast have welcomed us so well. Like, I've had a little bit of just like finding my feet this week, and Ollie and Tim have been especially great with me, just sort of guided by Tim and Ollie. I mean, this is his sort of 10th West End contract. And I just had a couple of things with my voice early on in the week, and you know what I mean, they're just really good at sort of grabbing you by the shoulders and being like, it's okay, and leading you through it. So I think they've been great to me.
I have to agree with Tom that the company who've stayed on have been exceptionally welcoming and reassuring about what we've brought to the production. And the nice thing about this particular show is that we were allowed to, within the certain confines, allowed to make the characters our own.
obviously we
to
had
a
to hit
certain
certain
degree,
lights
yeah,
and stuff. But.
yeah, and also there had been actors playing our characters before we created the roles, so you have to steer your ship somewhere in between what they've done and you creating something interesting for an audience as well. So, and we've been allowed to do that, which is not always the case if you take on a role. As Tom was saying, I've never taken on a role in a show that's already running before either, so, or in a production rather that's already been running. Yeah. So that was new. But the cast, our new company, are dynamite, and also the people that we've been working with who were in the show before have been incredibly supportive and very kind.
It's been very interesting because I was also doing shows in the evening, so it was like we were doubling up, so I would rehearse in the day and you'd it was quite amazing because you would just allow the new actors, so Kiala would come in or Tom Francis would come in, and who's the new Romeo, and they would bring different energy and new energy, and I was very much like, I'm just going to go with what you bring. I'm gonna, I'm not going to be like, oh, this is how it was. I'm like, this is new, and I want us to find new things and new moments, and it's been really great to find those little like niche moments.
There you go, and Juliet is on at the Shaftesbury Theatre now. Time for a final check on the weather now. Gusty winds continue this evening with temperatures around 4 degrees overnight. Tomorrow morning continues to feel cold, but those winds will have died down with light cloud and a gentle breeze. Over the weekend there will be sunny intervals with temperatures around 13 or 14 degrees. That's it from us tonight. Thanks for watching the show, and we'll be back with more news from across London at 6 p.m. tomorrow. See you then.